Being a game master in the Cypher system is basically easy mode compared to most RPGs. The rules really get out of your way and let you guide the narrative while still having enough structure and support that it doesn't feel too loose. In fact, with Cypher, you can make the game as loose in narrative or tight and crunchy as you want. Do you want to tell an abstract murder mystery drama that relies on overcoming situations? Or do you want a more tactical classic fantasy dungeon delve, where every space matters? With the Cypher system, you could do both. Hell, I literally have videos in my actual plays that show you can do both even in the same campaign, and it still feels natural. But there's one part that does feel a little daunting to new GMs, and that's setting up the initial campaign. So let's go over some options, tips, and tricks to help you get the most out of your campaign. The first point I have is one that will make your life an easy one. If you don't have any specific world you want to tailor and have no problem playing in a pre-existing setting, something many GMs actually prefer to do, the Cypher system has you covered. Most pre-existing campaign settings have self-contained rulebooks, which means if you wanted to focus on the setting, you don't need all the Cypher core and expansion books, just the book or books for that setting that you want to use. And there's a ton of them. I don't feel like listing them all here because we'll be here all day, but let's go through a few of my favorites. Numenera was one that started it all. Before the Cypher system was a standalone product, Numenera was the base foundation. Science fiction dressed up like a fantasy. Your adventures take place in the real world, but 1 billion years in the future. Humanity has only just reappeared, and a strange mix of knowledge and technology ranging from medieval peasantry to techno-crafters using the billion years worth of leftover technology from ancient alien civilizations that have arisen and disappeared on Earth. Next is Path of the Planebreaker. Back in the day when I played 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons, I loved Planescape. It was one of my go-to settings, and Monty Cook was one of the big writers for the setting at the time. Well, Bruce Cordell, Sean K. Reynolds, and Monty Cook decided we needed something like that again. One of the best parts, for those of you that are only really experienced with D&D 5e, is that there are both 5e and Cypher versions of this setting. So if you need something to help you migrate your players over, this may be a good one to try out. Old Gods of Appalachia. Based on a podcast that, I'll be honest, I have not listened to as I'm not usually a big podcast guy, the book and setting is amazing. It's got that old Lovecraftian Cthulhu cosmic horror vibe thing going on, and I am so for it. My buddy Mr. Tarask has started a series of videos deep diving into the Cypher setting book a bit more, so check him out, link down below. Also, because of the very forgiving and easy to use open license, there are third-party settings that are worth checking out, like Harrow, The Blighted Plain by Underground Oracle. Described as a post-apocalyptic fantasy crystal punk setting, it certainly has a unique spin on a few things you may want to check out. And finally, my upcoming Voidhome book that I'm writing with some assistance from Old Gus, the individual responsible for the SRD website you're likely using, as well as many of the Cypher system player aids you'll find in the Cypher Unlimited community. The sci-fi horror setting of Voidhome is a bit of a different beast, because not only does it have its own setting, but while still being fully backwards compatible with other Cypher products, it has its own unique tweaks on some of the rules, like a new tags-based system for customization of items, reworking the conflict system, becoming an initiative-free RPG, expanded rules for injuries and conditions, shipbuilding, detailed exploration mechanics, a new dread system, and a ton more. These are only just a taste of the pre-existing settings you can choose from. Pick a genre, and there may very well be a setting for it already. But what if you have an idea that is not in an existing setting? Or at least one that isn't close enough that you could just reflavor an existing setting. That's when we start getting into the customization that is daunting to so many new GMs. Starting with genres. If you're putting together a custom world for your game, or maybe playing in a pre-existing IP like The Witcher or Foundation, likely you have certain genres in mind. The Cypher System rulebook has some great advice for many of the basic genre styles you may want the game to be set in. By taking these, or even mixing and matching them, you already have some pretty solid guidelines to help you shape the fundamentals of what your game is about. Even if you follow the rest of my advice in this video, I still suggest checking out those chapters from the main rulebook. But what if you want a more detailed knowledge on those genres, like a deep dive into horror, or sci-fi, or fantasy? That's where the books, commonly known in the community as the White Books, comes into play. Each one of these expansion books focuses on a genre, with new ones still getting released. As of me making this video, we're actually waiting on the post-apocalyptic and modern magic setting books, so check out those genre-specific sections and books to help guide you when you first start out. It's an easy route to go, with a lot of the planning work basically done for you already. But for those of you that want to get a little bit more advanced with it, the Cypher System has you covered, and that's why we get into building your own campaign world in Cypher can be like building a house out of those little toy bricks, with each brick being its own part of the rules. Each campaign in Cypher may have a very different looking house, but the foundation you build upon still makes it familiar enough to be easy to use. Let's go through a few of the different things you may want to consider when making your particular setting. Starting with the rules, at which point you'll probably ask yourself,
What? I'm using Cypher. Those are the rules.
Well, yes and no. Even among the most basic rules, there are options. Groups of dials and knobs you can adjust. Bricks for your custom house you may not even have considered. Things like measurement. By default, many games in Cypher use abstract distances. Immediate, long, short, very long, whatever. We don't get hung up on the details and make heavy use of theater of the mind. However, if you want something a little more crunchy and technical, these distances are given in the exact values both in imperial and metric units. There's also advice if you wish to use a square or hex grid map similar to games like D&D or Pathfinder, with each space being a relatively familiar 5 feet or 1.5 meters. Maybe you want to adjust some things like the pools for your character. In the Cyberpunk game that I ran with Ted from Nerd Immersion, Bob World Builder, Dungeoneers Pack, etc., I actually added a 4th pool for humanity to give that cyberpunk type vibe. And what about some of the optional rules? Some people refer to them as system mods, kind of like installing mods for Minecraft or Skyrim. Some of them only add very minor tweaks, and some of them add entirely new subsystems or adjust core mechanics. I'm not going to cover all of them here, but there will be a link in the description below to find the ones publicly in the SRD website. Finally, our character options. The lists of types, flavors, foci, and descriptors is a long one. And this is one area where I think an important piece of advice is really needed, because I have seen many new GMs coming from 5e saying,
Well, I feel bad restricting any of the options.
However, I would like to remind you this isn't an existing house like other systems where you may decide the players don't get to have part of it. You're building up, not tearing down. It's expected if you make a specific campaign that you either utilize the suggested lists for the appropriate genres or curate your own lists like I do. You're not banning anything, you're adding options. Part of the reason I suggest curating lists when you can is choice paralysis. This is a mistake I still make to this day. I'm currently running a Path of the Planebreaker / The Strange campaign as a live actual play on my channel every Sunday, where it makes sense for the players to currently have access to a bit of everything. But due to the nature of Cypher, its options, the fact that you can mix and match, and the fact that you can even customize those options as a player, if you allow everything, it can be quite overwhelming, especially if you're new to this. Curating smaller lists for use in your campaign is a way to help focus the theme and story you wish to tell. Don't be afraid to do so. And my final piece of advice for this video. One of the big benefits I've seen in Cypher is the fact that it has a very cohesive community that is largely due to the Cypher Unlimited community you can find on Discord, Facebook, the social media formerly known as Twitter, etc. If you still feel lost or need some quick advice, join that community and ask. I pretty much guarantee you'll get answers from friendly people, no drama, and tons of helpful advice. Something that is a rarity on the internet, and frankly shocking considering the Discord itself has, I think, like almost 7,000 people on it at the moment or something like that. It's crazy. You can also join my Discord if you want assistance or advice in a smaller community that doesn't have a billion channels on it. I only have hundreds of people, not thousands, and I and a bunch of other people hang out there as well and love to help when we can. I feel like I can literally talk all day about GMing advice, especially when it comes to this system, but I wanted to keep these videos relatively short, something I believe I have already failed at, but don't worry, I have plenty more videos coming soon. And hey, if you like this video, give a like and subscribe. And if you want to support me, consider tossing a couple of bucks for this Canuck for some brewskis down in my Ko-fi link below. If you do, there may even be some Void Home sneak peeks in your future as well. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.